Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Today, we're going to be talking about the Best Jacket release of We Have Demons #2. This is from writer Scott Snyder. We have pencil work by, although I suppose it's digital pencil work, by Greg Capullo, Jonathan Glapion on inks, Dave McCaig on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. Man, after the first issue, which I really enjoyed. Like, I just enjoyed what a wild ride it was. We talked about when we reviewed the first issue how it felt like Snyder and Capullo were really getting to cut loose. Sky's the limit. The story could go anywhere. Unlike DC work, where there's oversight, and you know that because Superman and Batman and whatnot are worth a lot of money to their companies, they're always going to come back to status quo. It's completely unpredictable, and We Have Demons. No idea where the story could go. Sky's the limit. So and it's really over the top, and they're clearly having fun doing it. So I was pretty impressed with the first issue. That being said, I thought there was a little more emotion in the second, and it felt like a bigger chunk of story to me. So I think I liked the second issue even better than the first. I don't know. What did you think, Rocky?
It added more to the mythology. That's what I enjoyed about it. I like that we found out more information. The first issue gave us a lot of information which was very helpful. But this definitely it added more substance, more history, gave us some more background of the characters. We met more of the team. We met more about this new interesting character, this Gus character, this Gus Heller, this
Yeah.
demon character. So I thought this was a more interesting issue myself. The first issue was a great primer, but this one I would agree it's slightly more enticing. It's really nice to see that the second issue is on par or maybe a little bit better than the first.
Yeah, it's a good point. We talked a lot, or I talked a lot about the idea in the first issue of taking these two ideas that usually are sort of on opposite ends of storytelling. Belief in religion means maybe you don't buy into science, or you believe so much science that you kind of poo-poo religion. And Scott taking those two ideas and melding them together, which I really thought was an idea whose time is long in coming. Like, um, I believe that there's something out there that's bigger than us, but I'm very much a believer in science as well. I don't see why you can't have both. So that idea being introduced in the first issue was fantastic, and the ideas of the elements, the horn and the halo and everything. I just loved everything about it. The thousand blades, like right away, I heard 1,000 blades, and my mind starts ticking away. How can I turn that into a T-shirt? That would be fantastic. Have the halo on it, maybe a blade on the back or something like that. Maybe I can make it glow in the dark. That would just be like super cool. But anyway, a lot of great ideas, right? Um, but maybe more like you were saying of a setup or an overview, and then when we get to this second issue, what Scott and uh, Greg and Jonathan and everyone have done is, so now they're taking those ideas that they introduced in the first issue, and they're sort of applying them to the characters that we were introduced to in the first issue, but they're applying them to the characters. We're seeing how those ideas have affected Lamb and Gus, how they've brought them to the place that they are currently in the story, which then brings like some emotional weight, right? So we're introduced to the ideas at first, and now the ideas are being applied, and we start seeing how they're affecting the characters in the story. So I think in that way, maybe that's why the second issue feels, I don't know, maybe the word is impactful or emotional, where like you were saying, we're starting to get to know these characters uh, more, and Gus is visually fantastic um, with what Greg Capullo is doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I, I particularly like because the first issue we were told the story of sort of like the god folk. And we were told it more from almost like the human point of view, almost through the eyes, almost through the eyes of the lead character, Lamb, her father's character, Cash. And here we get the demon folk side. And Gus is, of course, a demon. And it's interesting because, you know, one of the one of the questions that's answered is, if Gus is a demon, how come he's a good guy? And of course, we get the history of Gus, and through Gus's telling of the story to Lamb, giving Lamb his backstory, we learn a lot more about the history of what, I guess, of the bad guys. You know, when the demons first came, when, because we have these meteorites, these asteroids that maybe hit Earth, containing Halo or Horn, and if Horn seems to have more influence, more negative influence. Horn is the darkness as opposed to the light that is the Halo. And there hasn't been a lot of halos. There hasn't been a lot of meteorites hitting the Earth containing a lot of halos. So the good guys are out. They need more Halo, and they're desperate for it. Meanwhile, the demons are outnumbering them because there's a lot more Horn apparently on the Earth. And I really like Gus's history here, and I don't know if you want to get into that, but Gus's character is really interesting. He's over 100,000 years old, and how he ends up, frozen in an iceberg, only just as he was bitten and infected by the Horn, before the Horn completely infect the Gus. I'm calling him Gus for simplicity's sake. His real name, his birth name was Rahalor Sta, but he was 100,000 years ago. He was basically a troglodyte caveman, sort of infected with the Horn. But then he was frozen in ice, and then he was of course he was defrosted 100,000 years later, only to basically he's defrosted. It's almost like Captain America, except a lot longer than Captain America. And when he's
Yeah.
unfrozen, he's sort of like the super soldier, but he's infected with this Horn, and it's Cash who actually befriends him, and they experiment on Gus, but it's Cash that befriends him and creates that sort of halo, that tiara that he wears containing Halo, which prevents him from being fully transformed into a demon, and that's how he became an ally of Cash. And it's quite interesting how Snyder ties that relationship, Cash's relationship with the demon, is very much a metaphor for the relationship that we all have with our darker side. Keeping our darkness at bay, and in this story, Cash does that by through the use of the Halo, but one could also say it's through the use of friendship and seeing through the darkness and seeing the light and the good in everyone, even a demon. So, I mean, full credit to Snyder here. Even with this character work, even on the surface level, there's a lot of meaning here and a lot of metaphor that one can take into one's own life, depending on how deep you want to get into the story.
Yeah, it's 100% that, which I think is so interesting because you can read it in so many different ways. Why is it worse? Why is there so much more bad stuff in the world than good, seemingly? Why has so much more Horn hit than Halo? And that gets into the idea of the religious or the faith part of the story, right? Like Cash is somebody who sort of believes in the better side of things. So you can look at the story as like, okay, the Earth is coming to an end. The Horn people forces or whatever, the demon folk, I guess we'll say, are rising up because things are just so bad. Everybody's is separate. Nobody's connected, right? And so you can start seeing all those ideas that Snyder's throwing out, in Gus's own words. And the reason he's called Gus, because he does have that real long name that Rocky said. I can't remember what it. Yeah, the Ra Helor Sta. But he was found frozen in the Augustus iceberg, and it's a lot easier to say Gus than Ra Helor Sta, I guess. So they
Yeah.
nickname him Gus, and that's fantastic. But even when he talks about, way back when everything was, people were being infected. Obviously, there weren't as many humans back then, um, but Horn was still there. And then you fast forward, he's thought out, and now the world is coming to an end. There's so much more Horn. There's not as much Halo, and you can look at it as kind of a commentary on where we are right now. It seems like things are much more bad than they are good. Um, but really, it's about how do you overcome that? It's about connectivity. It's about reaching out. Like Rocky was saying, overcoming your own demons. And how does Gus do that? Well, he does it with the help of friendship. I love the line that Snyder gives to Gus. So from his perspective, Gus is telling us what he thinks Halo is and what he thinks Horn is, and he says Halo is the effort, your hand extended, right? Like you're reaching out to somebody. You want that connectivity. You want to be something be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Horn is your hand clawing up, grabbing at everything, pulling it down, pulling it into you. It's hunger, right? It's sort of greed. Um, you want everything for yourself. You're not thinking about anybody else. You're not trying to be part of something that's bigger than yourself because it can be better than yourself. Like if we're going to survive as a human species, both in this story and in real life, we need to work together. Nobody's gonna, nobody's Superman. Nobody has superpowers, and we're not going to get out of this mess that we're in on our own. Again, both in the real world and in this story, they've got to work together. So it's about that idea of using Halo, using our better angels, and it goes even farther when you talk about Cash pulling Gus back from almost his complete transformation into a demon from the horn. Gus has belief, like Rocky was saying, that people, individuals can fight off their inner demons, but maybe they need a little help. And how do you get that help? You get that help by giving something of yourself. And in this case, what Snyder does is he says that Cash Cullen, Lamb's father, took a small piece of his own blade, like something that was an extension of him, something that he needed to keep fighting demons. He sacrificed a little of his own blade to make the halo that Gus wears that helps hold Gus back from his full transformation, going full demon or what have you. So
And that's a
again,
great metaphor because just a
yeah.
small piece of halo, just like a small act of kindness, can make
Hmm.
somebody who is evil, you know, you, kinder himself. Like kindness spreads, and maybe that's why there's less halo than horn, because halo is so much more powerful. You can have a small piece of halo that might be, maybe it's even more, a small piece of halo is more powerful than a large piece of horn, just because of the power of light and love, and depending on how the metaphor is going to be played with Snyder here. But I love the clenched fist idea, the idea that the horn is like the clenched fist. It's but yet I like the I interject another metaphor that when you learn to love and embrace light, you can let go. And it's like if you're trying to cup water, if you have water in your palm of your hand, it'll stay there, but the moment you clench your fist, you'll lose the water. And so
Yeah.
that's what the horn is. It's the negativity, and it always, it's self-defeating. And so yeah, I mean, just this, the metaphors, and I think these metaphors come naturally as we read this. I mean, you and I aren't like, it's not like we're trying to over philosophize this story. It's got good themes to it. That's what I like
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, and it's like these aren't, Scott didn't come up with these ideas of light versus dark or connectivity versus individuality or what have you. Like I think in talking about this, there's a little bit, I get a little bit of the Star Wars vibe,
Yeah.
of the light and the dark. You can talk about open fist, closed fist in terms of kind of Eastern philosophy and different martial arts styles. But yeah, it's that idea that the negative emotions, the anger, the greed, that's not the way we save each other. We need to look to the better parts of ourselves. So as far as the story itself, so Lamb is learning about all this stuff. She's getting to know Gus that she met at the end of last issue, and we're getting to know Gus as Gus sort of plays the role of narrator for this issue. But she gets to meet some of the other Blades that are left, and they're all on their way to a kind of a remote spot in Norway where they think more Halo is going to land. And apparently, Lamb's father, Cash Cullen, at several times predicted that some more Halo was going to land, and it never did. And every time they'd get a little more dejected. It felt like maybe they struggled. It was a little harder to believe that they were going to win, a little harder to have faith. But apparently, when Cash Cullen predicted or figured out that this Halo was going to land in Norway, he was more confident than ever that he was right this time. And so they're on their way there. They get attacked, unfortunately, in midair by a bunch of demon folk. They lose like there's already very few Blades. They even lose some on the journey over there. They get to this remote cabin that's been rented. They're waiting for the Halo to come down, and sort of the leader of the Blades, she says that they find out her name is June. They find out that there's a traitor among them. They have some demon blood, and demon blood reacts to other demon blood, and so they're worried there's a traitor in the midst of the Blades that are left. And she goes around and she's sort of testing. She's holding the demon blood up next to each person to see who it reacts to, and it doesn't react to any of them, but does react to something that was on the plane, because the other thing that they brought with them was the body of Cash Cullen. Um, and it's a huge reveal at the end. Uh, and again, apologies, we're going full spoilers here, so apologies if you haven't read it.
Well,
But
I don't need to show the page. We can keep it a spoiler, but
well, should we, or should we go?
well,
Yeah, you know what?
it is interesting. It adds a very much a new element to it because if
Yeah,
we're gonna
pause it. Yeah, if you haven't read this, everybody, pause pause the review, go read it, come back, because we're gonna spoil it right here.
all
Yeah,
right,
what it's reacting to, what the demon blood is reacting to, is actually uh, Lamb's father's body, Cash Cullen, who had the most faith of anybody, who was the epitome of what it meant to be a blade and have faith. He's a demon. He's infected. Um, and it threw me for a loop. It's like all these metaphors we're talking about, and the faith of Cash and everything, and wait, he's infected. That's just brutal. That's like, to go back to my Star Wars analogy, that's like Luke turning to the dark side. No, not Cash Cullen, not
yeah,
him. He was the best of them, and how will the others keep their faith with this sort of event happening with when they see the best of them defeated, and not just killed, but turned to the other side. And for Lamb, she's struggling with her faith, right? Like, she has one of the blades that used to be her mother's, and the blade is activated by faith. And with the life that she's led, she doesn't necessarily have faith in God. And June tells her at one point, you don't need to have faith in God. You just need to believe. You just need to have belief in something. And it's actually a pretty funny sequence when uh, she's fighting an armadillo that's been infected with horn. And the reason they do an armadillo is because apparently a human can only be infected with horn if it's bit by another human that's infected with horn. So if you get bit by another animal that's infected with horn, you can still be killed, chewed up, or whatever, but you're not going to be transformed. But they do it as sort of a training thing for Lamb, and she's she's trying to get her blade to glow. Her blade that's made out of halo, and she's talking about things that she believes in just to get it to glow, and she's like, coffee, taxing the rich, Beyonce, like, come on, blade,
yeah,
these are things I believe in, like. So as heavy as this is, and as fantastic and interesting as these big ideas are, there's still plenty of humor. And
right.
I've
But
always felt like Capullo's art is perfect for that. Like, he
yeah,
draws big bombastic action scenes, but there's always a softness to his art that I think what makes that humor work. He's not, like, for me, Todd McFarlane's art, like, he has some similarities with Capullo's art, and obviously Capullo worked on Spawn for a long time. But for me, the sharpness and the detail in McFarlane's art, it goes a little farther than it does in Capullo's, and it doesn't necessarily suit humor as well. Humor doesn't play as well with, like, McFarlane art, in my mind, as much as it does Capullo. So
yeah.
little lighthearted moments like that keep it fun
And
as well.
I would just add that not only is that a lighthearted moment, but it's also another revealing moment because it's funny that she's trying to find faith in something. She thinks she's got faith in all these things, but I like the fact that faith isn't what we all maybe think it is. Faith isn't, oh, I love Elvis Presley or I love Beyonce and I have faith. No, that's not what faith is. Faith is something, it has a deeper meaning than that. And you can't just pretend you have faith in something. It's so there's almost like a higher power that determines what you actually believe in, and it's not a coincidence that when she thinks about her father, she starts to get more of her faith, and it's her. I like the fact that you can't trick the halo into thinking that you have
Yeah.
faith in something when you don't. So there is a higher power that seems to be at play here, and that's what I really like. And you alluded to the fact that there's definitely kind of a Sith Jedi sort of vibe to this, but it seems to have its own kind of mythology here, and I like the way that Snyder's playing with it.
Yeah. Well, the other point, I'm glad you brought up, when she does think about her dad and it starts working. Um, what's interesting is, but then in that moment, like, she's fighting one of the demon folk that attacks them in midair on the plane,
Yeah,
and she's fighting, and her blade starts to glow, and she doesn't even necessarily notice it, but Gus notices and says, "Lamb, your blade." And she goes, "Yeah, it's working. I thought of my dad." And then it's like, at the moment she realizes it's working,
yeah,
it stops working.
yeah,
Like, it's that idea that like you were saying, that faith is, it's something that we're not even necessarily conscious of. Yeah, you can believe that we should tax the rich, or you can believe the sky is blue and grass is green or whatever, but that's at the surface. What is truly in your heart, what is, it's faith that comes from your subconscious, that's so ingrained as a part of you that uh it is subconscious. It happens without you thinking about it, and if you do stop to think about it, you kind of
Yeah.
lose it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
going back to what you were saying earlier, which was a fantastic idea of the idea of cupping water in your hand, but as soon as you try to grasp it, it
Yeah.
flows away. That's the idea of faith. Like, I think this is what I believe in, but as soon as you try to put your hand around it, you've lost it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and the again, I go back to the idea that Capullo and Snyder are doing this away from DC, where there
Yeah.
isn't, and I'm not saying that they don't still have stories to tell at DC, or might not go back to DC, or aren't, fantastic creators that could tell great stories still at DC, but it's just the idea that the sky's the limit. They own this stuff. They can do whatever they want. They're not beholden to the characters. And even as readers, we're like, well, we're not coming to it with any preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
Like, if you go and you read a Batman comic or a Superman comic or a Spider-Man comic, you expect them to act a certain way because they've been around for decades and they've acted that certain way. And even if you try to make a big status change in those characters, in the back of your mind, as a longtime comic reader, it's got to come back to true, so they can still sell the pajamas and
Yeah.
candy bars and breakfast cereal and put them on the big screen in the movies and whatnot. This, I have no expectation. I have no idea where it's going to go. I can be surprised,
Yeah.
and I love that.
And another thing I like, and again, even the swearing in this, there's actually an in-story explanation for the swearing, because I love the fact that it's not easy to access faith in a higher power. I mean, it does require sort of an innate amount of spirit, probably some internal spiritual work of some kind. At least that's hinted at, given Lamb's sort of inability to master and get a hold of her own faith. But what I like is how easy it is to access, for the demons to access who they are. And I think swearing is an indication of that. I mean, the demons all swear. It's because that's one way you can tell a demon. They're cursing all the time. And
Yep.
it's actually one of the tells. It's like a poker face. If somebody's swearing all the time. And there's a metaphor there too. I mean, I can always tell when I'm upset because I'm generally
Yeah.
swearing a little bit more. So I really like that. And that adds, again, that adds to the humor of the story, because there's one time where she's, Lamb utters the word shit and then she changes the shoot, and she's trying to correct herself, so because she's normally kind of a potty mouth herself. And so it's just, Snyder's really done his legwork and his homework here, and there's consistency and interplay between not only the themes but how the characters talk and their dialogue and everything, and it's just impressive. And this leads into my next thing, which I really enjoyed. I love the international grouping. Like, I love all the people that are members of this group. We got June, who I think's American. Mark's Canadian. Go Canadian. Kanji is Japanese. Tiro is from South Africa. Ketch is from Scotland. Kellen is from Great Britain. Manu and Ava are from Germany and Iran. And Zhao, the pilot, who unfortunately doesn't make it through the issue, he's from Brazil. I mean, we have an international cast. So we have an entire world, people from all over the world that are part of this Halo quest. And there's a sense that this isn't just an American story or Western story. It's a diverse cast. And it's just very well done. It's just, I mean, again, this is, shame on DC for not, off, this would have been a great Vertigo or Black Label title. But hey, man, if I got a hats off to Snyder, because I'm definitely going to stick with this through Comixology, man. This is very well put together.
Yeah, and we know we're going to get print versions of this. I'll definitely be double dipping. I don't want to wait. I certainly won't wait for the chapters to come out in print because I want to read it because it's so good. But this is a story I want to own. I want to own the individual issues. And
Yeah.
I think I heard Scott say that they're going to do variant covers. They're very much going to treat this as a direct market comic, as opposed to some of the other Best Jacket titles that are coming through Comixology. Maybe like they might collect them as one shots and that kind of thing. But this is built for the direct market. And yeah, you're right. DC, But again, I mean, DC's never going to let Scott and Greg do this over there if Scott and Greg want to own it 100%. So, you know,
It's true.
I'm glad that they're doing this, that Scott's doing some stuff, and he's supposed to come on soon to talk about his best jacket stuff and kind of the idea of distributing things in different ways, Noctera being kickstarted first and that kind of stuff. Because him and I have talked about it in the past about finding new ways to bring new people in, and we both agree that digital is sort of it's the modern version of the spinner rack where you can browse and find things. So, but yeah, I agree with you about the diverse cast. And again, I think it goes back to the idea of connectivity. And we don't get out of the mess we're in the real world, and they don't get out of the mess they're in, and we have demons without working together. And that doesn't just mean Americans working together or Canadians working together or Brazilians work. Like we as a planet, I feel like need to come together a little bit more. If anything, the pandemic has shown us that. So as far as like predicting what's going to happen or what I want to happen, um, I would love to see the Halo actually hit, like, and maybe it's not going to be as much as they might hope,
Mhm.
but maybe we could have a few issues where they go around and they're recruiting new members of the Blades because they have Halo to actually fashion new blades,
Yeah.
and that could be kind of a globe trotting thing where they're jumping around looking for. Um, the other thing I wonder is it's going to go one of two ways. I think either Cash Cullen is dispatched quickly and Lamb will probably be the one to do it, maybe next issue, or how much more brutal would it be? And in my mind, it would create more of a sense of menace that Lamb would start to become a bigger part of the Blades, but her father, her demon infested father, that's been turned would become kind of the leader of the Horn. That would just,
Yeah.
oh man, how like traumatizing and horrible for Lamb. And you know, filled with regret that her relationship with her father wasn't as good as it started out when she was a little kid and had that sort of hero worship that we all
Yeah.
have for our parents when we're very young. Like that, oh, I don't know if I want that, but that's probably what we'll get because you know the whole idea of Snyder's going to give us readers what we need rather than what we want. He's going to
Well,
make us uncomfortable by
well,
doing that. So,
well. One of the questions I have following up on your comments there is can Cash be converted back to the side of the Halo? Because
mm,
Gus, you know, like a Halo Tiara converted Gus put Gus on the side of Halo. Why not just create a small piece of Halo and put it on Cash? Maybe that'll convert him back to their side. Who knows? Like, you know, exactly how powerful was the conversion? I mean, in other words, and this is where we get into that other question now: is how much is this dictated by it's nature versus nurture? If
mm-hmm.
if Cash was innately a good person, does he how much halo? Maybe he needs less halo to overcome a demon temptation. Like maybe Halo and Horn, uh, you know, are we only good because of a substance called Halo, or are we only bad because of Horn? Do we not have free will to determine our innate goodness? Well, to what extent does Halo and Horn overcome our free will? And I mean, because it's sort of playing with that a little bit. So and this is where again it's the whole Jedi Sith thing. Trying. There was some good. Obi-Wan Kenobi was wrong about Darth Vader. Luke Skywalker was right. There was still good in his father.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
what about this case? Yeah.
yeah, it goes to the question, which I mean, we're getting a little pedantic here, but you know, Gus had said, well, his body got frozen before the Horn finished the transformation. Well, Cash
Right.
hasn't been dead that long, so is this transformation complete? What does that mean that the
Yeah.
transformation is
Well, what
complete?
does it mean that he was dead? I mean, because
Yeah,
Gus did never died. He was in
he
suspended
was. Yeah,
frozen
yeah, he
animation,
was.
I guess. But
Yeah, he got frozen before the transformation was complete. But it, it goes to the question of, like you were saying, is it the how long the transformation takes, depending on how good the person was? Like, where's the is it the
yeah.
same for everybody? Does it take longer with somebody who's a bad person as opposed to somebody who's a good person? So again, I mean, little details that might not matter in the end, but it's a good question to ask for sure.
I gotta make a comment. My favorite scene in the entire issue 2 is when they're flying in the air. They're in the plane, and there's the plane ahead of them that you soon discover is filled with demons. And the back of the plane ahead of them opens up, and there's this little girl holding a teddy bear, and she smiles and waves to Zhao, the pilot, and of course she's a demon, and then she jumps right on the plane and turns into a demon. It's such an awesome transformation because it looks so innocent and it becomes completely horror filled. It goes from complete innocence to abject terror in such a perfect sequence, beautifully drawn by Greg Capullo. It's very well done.
Yeah, I give Greg a lot of credit for that because she's got what I would call a shit-eating grin on her face, where
Yeah.
she knows, she knows she's horrible. She knows she's a demon, and she knows she's about to have a hell of a lot of fun. What passes for fun for a demon? It's all there in that one panel. So yeah, I agree. So if you guys aren't reading We Have Demons, you're really missing out. And the other titles have all been spectacular. We've had the first issue of Clear that we've talked about. We had the first issue of Night of the Ghoul that we talked about, which is absolutely fantastic. So next week we'll have the second issue of Clear, and then the following week the second issue of Night of the Ghoul, and they're all worth your time. And like I said in the past when we've talked about these, you subscribe to Comixology Unlimited. It's like $5.99 a month, and you get all the Comixology originals, including all of the Best Jacket titles, plus for like a $40,000 comic library of books to read with some classics from Marvel and DC and Image and just all kinds of great stuff. If you have Amazon Prime, you don't get that 40,000 book library, but you get all of the Comixology originals, so you can do that as well. Or the final way that you can do it, and even Scott's like, don't do this, and I think I heard him say it's probably not what I should be telling people because I probably make more money if people just go and buy the individual issues. But even he's saying, don't do that. It's like $4.99 for an individual issue. For $1 more, you can get all the issues and plus the library. So again, I think it's a fantastic way to do it. And if you're one of those people that's like, man, I just hate digital, you know what? You're going to have to wait a little longer. I think it's like 4 or 5 months, maybe. I don't think it's as long as a year, maybe 6 months. After they're released on Comixology, they'll be printed from Dark Horse. Dark Horse and Comixology made a deal that all their original content on Comixology, all their Comixology originals, as they call them, are going to be in print from Dark Horse, assuming the paper shortage doesn't get worse. So yeah, you'll have a chance to read these if you're one of those people that just refuses to read digital. I guess you can come here and let us talk about it and then experience it for yourself in a few months' time. So, hats off to Scott. Like I said, we hope to have him on soon to talk about all this stuff. He's, as you can imagine, very busy teaching his class and getting the word out for all this stuff. But it's been a while since we've had him on the show, so hopefully we'll have him on for you soon. So I go back and forth, Rocky. Like I thought Clear was my favorite title, and then I'm like, oh, Night of the Ghoul, I don't know. And then I read the second issue of We Have Demons. I'm like, why is it? No, this one's my favorite. But then I have a feeling my favorite Best Jacket titles, whichever one I've read most recently, they're all just fantastic. So I love it. Any last thoughts as we wrap up here, Rock?
I'm just hats off to Snyder and Capullo. This was the whole team, Clappy and McKeag. The creative team have done a really good job here. This is it's a hot, what I'm clearly this is easily the best comic I've read this week. Certainly better than anything we read in our DC Comics reviews. This is absolutely something that people should be reading. And if you're a person that's normally addicted to the physical copies, man, this is a great incentive to try digital because, as you said, Comixology is definitely, you get a lot of good bang for your buck.
Yeah, and good point on calling out the rest of the team. We probably didn't talk enough about what a great job Glappian and McKeag did. I mean, Glappian's inks over Greg are always fantastic, and Greg's the first one to talk about how additive Jonathan is in adding that grit and that visceral feel and the textures to his art, and that you need that in this sort of story where Capullo is really pushing himself and going over the top with these demons and monsters and blood and gore. You need those textures to kind of separate and have the art pop off the page, the line work, something more than just pencil. And then the colors from Dave McKeag are fantastic. Whenever you talk about halo or a blade glowing, like it looks like it's glowing on the page. It's fantastic. And I think also the fact that you're reading it on a screen helps with that as well, as opposed to, just flat on paper. Just one more reason to give digital a try. When I first started reading digital, when I got into the press side of things and started covering stuff and I would get early copies that were digital. There's no way to not get them digitally, and so I was forced to read digitally, and I was a little resistant because I like that smell, I like the feel. But I gotta tell you, being able to carry around thousands of comics on your iPad,
Yeah.
and being able to see the art and zoom and pinch in and that kind of thing, it's worth it. So give it a try.
Yeah, I'm going to add one thing again. I said this before, but I love guided view, the guided view format on
Mm.
Comixology. Reading We Have Demons with the guided view where you can't cheat and you don't see the full page until, and I always suggest doing that because it's especially when you're reading a horror like comic like this, that guided view where you can't cheat to look ahead. You don't see the whole page. You just see it scene by scene or panel by panel. I love it. I just it makes for a much more satisfying reading experience overall, in my opinion.
See, I need to try that because I've only
It's
been reading them on my
Try it,
through
man.
the Kindle library. I got to remember to try that. So,
Yeah.
anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you haven't given We Have Demons a try, please do so. It really is very much worth your time. So, just a reminder, if you're only listening to the audio version of this on the Comic Source podcast, we do appreciate that. But be sure you head over to YouTube, search for the Comic Boom YouTube channel. It's Comic Space Boom exclamation. Give Rocky a subscribe, give him a follow. Make sure you like this video. All that helps us with to grow our numbers and get greater access and be able to cover more things for you. Conversely, if you are over on the Comic Boom channel on YouTube, we appreciate that you're here. Leave a comment down in the section below, but also go to your favorite podcast platform or podcast app on your smart device and do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe so you make sure you don't miss any of our audio content either. So once again, we love this issue. It was absolutely fantastic. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.